The transport ship landed on the gray surface of IV with a low hum, stood near the window and watched the massive buildings of the Galactic Coalition Military Academy rise from the rocky ground. She had seen pictures before, but nothing prepared her for how small she would feel standing in its shadow. She was 24 years old. She had trained her whole life for this moment, and she was the first human woman ever accepted into the Academy's elite combat program. The doors opened and cold air rushed in, grabbed her bag and walked down the ramp. Other cadets were already gathering in the landing zone. She saw species she had only read about in books. The tall, four-armed warriors with their gray skin and yellow eyes. The slim with their silver hair and quiet voices. The massive who stood nearly 3 meters tall and barely fit through standard doors. And then there was her, a human small by comparison, soft skin, only 2 arms, no natural armor or claws. But strapped to her back was something that made every alien turn and stare. A sword. It was a katana, forged from steel over 400 years ago on Earth. The handle was wrapped in old leather. The blade was sharp enough to split a falling leaf. It had belonged to her grandmother and her grandmother's grandmother before that, had carried it across the stars because it was more than a weapon. It was her history. She walked through the crowd and felt their eyes on her. She heard whispers in languages she did not understand, but she kept her head forward and said nothing. The orientation hall was enormous. 200 cadets sat in rows of seats that curved around a central stage, found a spot near the back and sat down quietly. She placed her bag at her feet and kept the sword across her lap. A few minutes later, a man sat down beside her. He was human, tall, with short black hair and tired eyes. He looked a few years older than her. "You must be the new one," he said in Korean. "I am." Nodded. Glanced at the sword. His expression became serious. "You brought that here." "Yes." "They will not like it." "I know." Opened his mouth to say more, but the lights dimmed and the hall fell silent. A figure walked onto the stage. He was 4 arms, a body covered in thick gray skin that looked like stone. His eyes were bright yellow and they swept across the room like searchlights. When he spoke, his voice was deep and powerful. "I am instructor," he said. "I have trained warriors for 40 years. I have fought in 12 campaigns. I have killed enemies you cannot imagine." He paused and let the silence hang. "You are here because you believe you are strong. You believe you are ready for war. But I tell you now, most of you are wrong. Most of you will fail. And those who do not fail will learn one simple truth." He raised one of his hands. In it was a plasma pistol. "Power wins. Technology wins. The galaxy does not care about your courage or your heart. It only cares about what you can do." He pointed the pistol at a metal target standing on the edge of the stage. He pulled the trigger. A bolt of blue-white energy shot across the room. It hit the target and melted through it in less than a second. The metal turned orange, then white, then dripped onto the floor like water. The cadets murmured in amazement. Instructor smiled. Then his yellow eyes found in the crowd. "You," he said, "human, come forward." Felt her heart beat faster, but she stood up calmly and walked down the aisle toward the stage. She could feel 200 pairs of eyes watching her. When she reached the front, Instructor looked down at her. He was nearly twice her height. "What is that on your back?" he asked. "A sword," said. "A sword." He repeated the word like it was a joke. "Made of what?" "Steel." The room went quiet. Then someone laughed. Then more joined in. Soon the entire hall was filled with the sound of alien laughter. Instructor did not laugh. He simply stared at her. "Steel," he said again. "You brought a steel sword to a military academy." He walked to the edge of the stage and picked up another metal target. He held it up for everyone to see. "This is military-grade armor plating," he said. "It can stop bullets. It can resist extreme heat. It is stronger than anything your ancestors ever made." He pointed his plasma pistol at it and fired. The bolt punched through the armor like it was paper. The metal fell from his hand in two melted pieces. "Steel cannot stop plasma, little human," said. "Your ancestors' toys have no place in modern warfare." The laughter returned, louder than before. Stood still, she did not argue, she did not explain. She simply bowed, a small and respectful bow, and turned to walk back to her seat. As she passed the rows of cadets, she heard their whispers. "Primitive. Stupid. Why did they even let humans in?" She sat down next to. He was looking at her with a mix of worry and respect. "You did not say anything," he said quietly. "There was nothing to say. They will remember this. They will use it against you." Touch the handle of her sword. Let them. That night, after the other cadets had gone to sleep, walked through the empty hallways of the academy, he could not rest. His mind kept returning to the look on his face when the entire room laughed at her. She had not shown anger. She had not shown shame. She had shown nothing at all. He found her in the training hall. The room was dark. The only light came from the stars outside the tall windows, and in that pale light moved. She held the sword in both hands. Her feet slid across the floor without sound. The blade cut through the air in smooth, perfect arcs. She spun. She stepped. She struck at enemies that were not there. Watched in silence. He had seen combat training before. He had seen soldiers practice with rifles and plasma weapons, but he had never seen anything like this. It was not just fighting. It was something else, something older, something that came from a time before starships and energy shields. Stopped, she turned her head slightly, aware of his presence. "You should sleep," she said. "So should you." She lowered the sword and faced him. Her breathing was calm. There was no sweat on her face. "What is this?" asked. "This training you do?" Looked at the blade in her hands. The starlight reflected off the steel like moonlight on water. "My grandmother taught me," she said, "and her grandmother taught her. On Earth, we trained this way for 1,000 years, long before we knew other species existed, long before we reached the stars." "But why? Swords are useless now. You heard what said." Smiled. It was a small, quiet smile. "The sword is not for killing," she said. "It is for training the mind. When you hold a blade, you learn to see without looking. You learn to move without thinking. You learn that the weapon is not what matters." She slid the sword back into its sheath. "What matters is the will behind it." Stared at her for a long moment. He did not understand, but something in her voice made him believe that she knew something the rest of them did not. "Get some rest," said. "Tomorrow will be hard." She walked past him and disappeared into the shadows of the hallway. Stood alone in the training hall. Outside the windows, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere out there, wars were being fought with weapons that could destroy planets. And somewhere in this academy, a human woman believed she could face all of it with nothing but a piece of old steel. He shook his head and went to bed. But he could not stop thinking about that small, quiet smile. 3 months passed at the academy, learned many things. She learned to fire plasma rifles and operate combat drones. She learned battlefield tactics and starship formations. She studied the weaknesses of enemy species and memorized the layout of a dozen different war zones. In all of these things, she was average. Her scores were not high. They were not low. She was simply one more cadet in a sea of 200. But there was one area where no one could match her. Close combat. Every week, the cadets trained in hand-to-hand fighting. They wore protective suits and used training weapons that could not kill but still hurt. And every week, defeated every opponent who faced her. It did not matter how big they were. It did not matter how many arms they had. When they came close, she moved like smoke. When they attacked, she was already somewhere else. When they thought they had her trapped, she slipped away and struck from an angle they never expected. the other cadets began to notice. Notice, too. He watched her train every morning before the sun rose. He saw the way she moved, smooth and controlled, like water flowing over stone. He did not understand how she did it, but he knew it was something special. "You are making enemies," he told her one day as they walked to class. "I am not trying to. It does not matter. The others see you winning and they do not like it, especially." Was a cadet, one of the best in the academy. He was instructor's favorite student. He had won every combat competition for 2 years in a row, and he hated humans. He had made this clear from the first day. He called them weak. He called them primitive. He said they did not belong among real warriors. And ever since started beating cadets in close combat, his hatred had grown worse. "He will challenge you soon," said. "I can see it in his eyes." Shrugged, let him. 2 days later it happened. Was eating in the meal hall with another human cadet named. Was not a fighter. She was an engineer, small and nervous, with quick hands and a brilliant mind. She had been assigned to support squad for the upcoming final exam. "I heard there is a problem with the simulation drones," was saying. "The control systems are old. Someone should really fix them before the crucible." "The instructors do not care," said. "They think danger makes us stronger." "Danger is fine. System failures are just stupid." Smiled, she liked. The girl talked too much, but her heart was good. Then a shadow fell over their table. Stood there, he was massive, even for a. His 4 arms were crossed over his chest, and his yellow eyes burned with anger. "Human," he said. Looked up at him calmly. "Yes. You think you are special because you can fight in close range. You think you are better than us." "I do not think anything, I just train." Slammed one of his fists on the table. The whole hall went quiet. "I challenge you," he said. "A formal duel. Plasma rifle against your stupid sword. If I win, you will throw that toy away and never touch it again. If you win," he paused and laughed, "but you will not win." Looked at the sword leaning against her chair. Then she looked back at. "I accept." Grabbed her arm. "No, this is madness. He will use a real plasma rifle. 1 hit and you are dead. The Academy does not allow killing in duels." "He does not care. He will say it was an accident." His face was pale. "Please, there must be another way." But stood up and faced directly. "When?" she asked. "Tomorrow, Central Arena. The whole Academy will watch." "Good." Smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Sleep well, human. It will be your last night with that blade." He turned and walked away. The cadets in the hall began whispering. Word of the duel spread through the academy like fire. That night and found in the training hall again. She was sitting on the floor with the sword across her knees. Her eyes were closed. "You cannot do this," said. "Plasma moves faster than anything. You cannot block it. You cannot dodge it. The physics are impossible." Opened her eyes. "Nothing is impossible. This is basic science. Energy weapons move at the speed of light." "Plasma is not light," said quietly. "It is superheated gas. It moves fast, yes, but not as fast as you think. And the rifle takes time to charge. The shooter takes time to aim. There are always delays." Stepped forward. "Even so, the margin is too small. We are talking about fractions of a second." "That is enough." Threw his hands up. "Enough for what? To die?" Stood up. She held the sword in front of her and drew the blade slowly from its sheath. The steel caught the dim light and seemed to glow. "Do you know what my grandmother told me when she gave me this sword?" asked. Neither of them answered. "She told me that the blade is not a weapon. It is an extension of the mind. When you train enough, you do not think about moving. You just move. You do not think about seeing. You just see. The body becomes faster than thought." She turned the blade and looked at her reflection in the steel. "On Earth, our ancestors faced arrows and bullets. They could not block them. Not really. But they learned to read the archer's eyes. They learned to feel the moment before the trigger pulled. They learned to move before the attack came. She looked at and, Plasma is just another attack, and is just another enemy. He is fast, but he is also angry. Angry people make mistakes. They telegraph their movements. They become predictable. And if you are wrong, asked, then I die. The words hung in the air like cold mist. His eyes filled with tears. Why risk everything for a sword? Slid the blade back into its sheath. She looked at the young engineer with gentle eyes. Because some things are worth more than safety, she said. My grandmother carried this sword through war. Her grandmother carried it through famine. For 400 years, my family has protected this blade because it represents who we are, our history, our will, our refusal to give up, even when the whole universe says we are weak. She placed a hand on shoulder. If I throw this sword away because some alien told me to, then I have already lost. Not the duel, something much more important. Was quiet for a long time, then he sighed. You are either the bravest person I have ever met, he said, or the most foolish. Smiled, maybe both. She walked toward the door, then stopped. Get some sleep, she said. Tomorrow I want you both in the arena. I want you to see what a human can do. She left them standing in the empty training hall. Looked at, do you think she can win? Stared at the doorway where it disappeared. I think, he said slowly, that I have never seen anyone so certain of anything in my life, and that either means she knows something we do not, or she has already made peace with death. He shook his head and walked away. Stood alone in the darkness for a long time. She thought about plasma weapons and reaction times, and the laws of physics that said what wanted to do was impossible. But she also thought about the look in his eyes, that calm, steady look that seemed to see something beyond the visible world. And for the first time, wondered if maybe the universe was bigger than she had been taught. Maybe there were things that science could not explain. Maybe tomorrow she would see one of them. The central arena of the academy was built to hold 10,000 spectators. On the day of the duel, every seat was filled. Word had spread across the moon of IV. A human with a steel sword was going to fight with a plasma rifle. Everyone wanted to see it. Some came to watch history. Most came to watch a human die. Stood at one end of the arena floor. She wore simple training clothes, black and fitted close to her body. Her sword hung at her side. She looked small against the vast empty space around her. At the other end stood. He wore light combat armor and held a military-grade plasma rifle in 2 of his 4 hands. His yellow eyes were fixed on with pure hatred. In the stands and sat together, was shaking. Hands were clenched into fists. I cannot watch this, whispered. Then close your eyes. I cannot do that either. On a raised platform above the arena, instructor stood with the other senior officers. His face showed no emotion, but his eyes never left the small human woman on the arena floor. A loud horn sounded. The crowd fell silent. An announcer's voice echoed through the arena. The rules are simple. First to land a disabling hit wins. Lethal force is not permitted. Cadets, prepare yourselves. Drew her sword. The steel sang as it left the sheath. She held it in both hands, the blade angled toward the ground. Raised his rifle and pointed it directly at her chest. The horn sounded again. The duel began. Fired immediately. A bolt of blue-white plasma screamed across the arena at impossible speed. Moved. She did not move away from the bolt. She moved toward it, her body twisted, her blade flashed upward. The plasma hit the steel and split apart, 2 streams of energy flying past her on either side. They burned into the arena wall behind her, leaving glowing marks. The crowd gasped. His eyes went wide. He fired again. Was already moving. Her feet barely touched the ground as she ran toward him. Her sword came up again, and again the plasma divided against the blade. Not blocked, not absorbed, guided. The energy flowed around the steel like water around a stone in a river. Impossible, someone shouted in the stands. But it was not impossible. It was technique. It was generations of training compressed into a single moment of perfect motion. Fired faster now. His forearms let him stabilize the rifle while adjusting his aim with incredible speed. Bolt after bolt flew toward, each one capable of burning through armor. But was not armor. She was movement. She was instinct. She had trained for this her entire life without knowing it. She saw the rifle. She saw his fingers. She saw the tiny light that glowed before each shot, and she moved before the plasma left the barrel. The crowd was screaming now. Some were cheering, others were crying. No one could believe what they were seeing. A human with a sword, deflecting plasma, was standing, her hands over her mouth. Tears ran down her face, but she was smiling. Was frozen, his eyes locked on as she danced through fire. On the platform, instructor leaned forward. His yellow eyes were wide. Began to panic. He was firing wildly now, his shots losing accuracy as fear took over. He stepped backward, trying to create distance, but would not let him. She closed the gap in seconds. Her blade moved in a blur, knocking aside one final shot. Then she was in front of him. Swung the rifle like a club, using all four arms. It was a desperate attack, full of power but empty of control. Ducked under the swing, she spun. Her sword came up in a perfect arc. The blade stopped 1 centimeter from his throat. The arena went silent. Stood frozen. His four arms hung at his sides. The rifle fell from his hands and clattered on the floor. He was breathing hard, his chest heaving, but he did not move. He could not move. The edge of that ancient steel was pressed against his skin. "Yield," said. Her voice was calm, steady, like she had just finished a morning walk instead of the most dangerous fight of her life. His jaw tightened. His pride screamed at him to refuse, to attack, to do anything except surrender to a human. But he could feel the blade. He could feel how still his hands were. He knew that if he moved, if he even breathed wrong, she would cut him before he could blink. "I yield," he whispered. The words were barely audible, but the arena was so quiet that everyone heard them. Then the crowd exploded. The sound was deafening. Thousands of voices shouting, screaming, arguing. Some species were angry, others were amazed. A few were laughing in disbelief. Lowered her sword and stepped back. She looked at with calm eyes. "Your rifle is fast," she said, "but your mind is slow. Train your thoughts, not just your weapons." She turned and walked toward the exit. The crowd kept roaring. Cadets were pushing against the barriers, trying to get a better look at her. Officers were shouting into communication devices. The entire academy had been turned upside down. And pushed through the crowd and met at the arena entrance, threw her arms around her. "You did it," she cried. "You actually did it." Was shaking his head. "I saw it with my own eyes and I still do not believe it. How did you do that?" Slid her sword back into its sheath. There was a small smile on her face. "I told you," she said. "The sword is not for killing. It is for training the mind. When you remove all thought, all fear, all hesitation, the body knows what to do. It has always known." But the plasma travels fast, but the shooter does not. Every attack begins in the mind. If you can read the mind, you can predict the attack. And if you can predict it, you can avoid it. Finished. Nodded or redirect it. They walked through the corridors of the academy. Everywhere they went, cadets stared at them, some with fear, some with respect, some with hatred. But no one laughed anymore. That night in his private quarters, instructor sat alone in the darkness. He had downloaded the combat data from the arena sensors and watched the duel 17 times. Each time he saw the same thing. A human moving at speeds that should have been impossible for her species. Reaction times that exceeded every biological limit in the Coalition database. Blade angles calculated with mathematical precision in fractions of a second. It was not luck, it was not a trick, it was skill. Pure, impossible skill. For 40 years, had believed that technology was everything. That muscles and speed and ancient weapons were relics of a dead age. That progress meant power, and power meant victory. But tonight, a human woman with a 400-year-old sword had proven him wrong. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. Steel cannot stop plasma, he murmured to himself. But even as he said the words, he knew they were no longer true, or perhaps they had never been true. Perhaps the blade had never been the point. Perhaps it was always about the hand that held it. On the platform where he had stood during the duel, there was still a mark on the railing. His fingers had gripped so hard that the metal had bent. He had not even noticed. For the first time in 40 years, Instructor did not know what to think. And for reasons he could not explain, this made him feel something he had not felt since he was a young cadet himself. Curiosity. He wanted to know more about these humans. He wanted to understand how they had hidden such strength behind such fragile bodies. And most of all, he wanted to see what else could do. The news spread faster than starlight. Within hours of the duel, every major news network in the Galactic Coalition was talking about it. Human defeats plasma with steel. Ancient sword technique stuns Academy. Is humanity more dangerous than we thought? Did not watch the news. She did not read the messages that flooded her communication device. She simply went to her room, cleaned her sword, and slept. But the galaxy did not sleep. On a dozen worlds, military leaders gathered in emergency meetings. Scientists argued about human biology. Politicians debated what this meant for the Coalition. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone wanted answers. 3 days after the duel, a ship arrived at the Academy. It was not a normal transport. It was a Coalition Navy cruiser, sleek and powerful, carrying someone important. Was called to the Academy's main office. When she arrived, she found Instructor standing outside the door. He looked at her but said nothing. Then he stepped aside and let her pass. Inside, a man waited for her. He was human, old, perhaps 60 years, with gray hair and deep lines on his face. He wore the uniform of a Coalition admiral, covered in medals and ribbons. His eyes were sharp and calm. "Sit down," he said. She sat. "My name is Admiral. I have served the Coalition Navy for 35 years. I am the highest-ranking human in the military." Nodded slowly. She had heard of him, every human had. "Do you know why I am here?" he asked. "Because of the duel." "Yes and no." He leaned forward. "What you did in that arena was remarkable, but it was also dangerous, not to you, to all humans." "I do not understand." Admiral stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the gray landscape of IV stretched to the horizon. "Humans joined the Galactic Coalition 50 years ago," he said. "We were late. Most species had been spacefaring for thousands of years before we even discovered fire. When we finally reached the stars, we were seen as children, weak, primitive, harmless." He turned to face her. "We let them believe this." Felt something cold move through her chest. "What do you mean?" "I mean that humanity has been hiding its true nature since we joined the Coalition. We have been pretending to be less than we are." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. He pressed a button and a holographic image appeared in the air between them. It showed a planet, blue and green and beautiful. "Earth," he said. Do you know what the Coalition calls it?" "No. They call it a..." Frowned. "I have never heard this term." "You would not have. We do not teach it in human schools. But the Coalition has a classification system for planets. Most species evolved on worlds with stable climates, mild weather, and few predators. These are called garden worlds, easy places to live, safe places to grow. He gestured at the image of Earth. Earth is not a garden world. It has earthquakes, volcanoes, hurricanes, floods, and ice ages. It has predators that can kill in seconds. It has diseases that have wiped out millions. The temperature ranges from burning hot to freezing cold, sometimes in the same day. He looked at her with intense eyes. Any species that survives on becomes something special. Their bodies adapt. Their reflexes sharpen. Their endurance grows. They learn to see patterns that other species miss. They learn to react before danger arrives. You are saying, said slowly, that humans are naturally stronger than we appear. Much stronger. Our reaction times are faster than almost any species in the coalition. Our endurance is legendary. We can run for hours without stopping. We can survive injuries that would kill others. We can adapt to almost any environment. He turned off the hologram and put the device away. But 50 years ago, when we first met the coalition, our leaders made a decision. They saw how powerful the other species were. They saw their ships and weapons, and they decided that the best way to survive was to seem harmless. So we hid, said. Yes, we showed them our art and our music. We showed them our scientists and our diplomats. We showed them everything except our warriors. Until me. Admiral nodded, until you. He sat down across from her again. What you did in that arena cannot be undone. The whole galaxy saw it. They saw a human deflect plasma with a sword. They saw something that should have been impossible. Are you angry with me? The Admiral was quiet for a moment. Then he shook his head. No, I am not angry. To be honest, I am proud. What you did was beautiful. It was a reminder of what we really are. He leaned back in his chair. But now the galaxy will look at us differently. Some will respect us. Some will fear us. And some will want to destroy us before we become a threat. What should I do? Nothing. Be yourself. Train. Fight. Show them what you can do. The time for hiding is over. He stood up and walked to the door. Then he stopped. Your sword technique, he said. Where did you learn it? From my grandmother, and she learned from hers. Do you know its origin? Touched the handle of her sword. My grandmother said it came from ancient warriors on Earth. Samurai, she called them. They trained to face arrows and swords. Later, some of them trained to face bullets. And you trained to face plasma. I did not know I was training for plasma. I was just training. The technique teaches you to read your opponent, to see the attack before it comes. Plasma is just another attack. Admiral smiled. It was a tired smile, but warm. Your grandmother was a wise woman. She was. Carry her sword well, and know that whatever happens next, you have made humanity proud. He opened the door and walked out. Sat alone in the office for a long time. She thought about everything the Admiral had said, about an hidden strength, about 50 years of pretending to be weak. And she thought about her grandmother, a small woman with gentle hands who had taught her how to hold a blade when she was only 5 years old. The sword is not for killing, her grandmother had said. It is for becoming who you truly are. Understood those words now. She understood why her family had carried this blade for 400 years, across oceans and continents, and finally across the stars themselves. It was not about the steel. It was about the spirit inside it. She stood up and walked out of the office. In the hallway, instructor was still waiting. What did he tell you? They asked. Looked at him. For a moment she saw past his gray skin and yellow eyes. She saw a warrior, a teacher, someone who had devoted his life to understanding strength. He told me the truth, she said, about what humans really are. Nodded slowly. I have been reading about your species. The more I read, the less I understand. What do you not understand? How you survived. Your planet should have killed you 1,000 times. Every generation faced extinction, and yet here you are. Smiled. That is exactly why we are here, she said. We survived because we had no choice, and now nothing in this galaxy scares us. She walked past him toward the training hall. Behind her, watched her go, and for the first time when he looked at a human, he did not see weakness. He saw something else entirely. Something that made even a 40-year veteran feel a small chill run down his spine. The crucible was the final test. Every cadet at the academy had to pass it to graduate. It was a full combat simulation in a ruined city environment, complete with autonomous drones that hunted the cadets like prey. The drones were programmed to wound, not kill, but they were fast, smart, and merciless. Squads of 4 would enter the city. Their mission was simple: reach the extraction point on the other side. Along the way, they would face traps, obstacles, and endless waves of enemy fire. Most squads took hours, some never made it at all. Squad had 4 members, herself, and to everyone's surprise, instructor had assigned him personally. You will learn more from her than from anyone else, he told the angry. Watch, listen, survive. Did not argue. Since the duel, something had changed in him. The hatred was still there, but it was quieter now, mixed with something else, something that might have been respect. The morning of the crucible was cold. The squad gathered at the entrance to the simulation zone, checking their equipment, carried a plasma rifle, had a portable computer and a bag of technical tools, had 2 rifles, 1 in each pair of hands. Had her sword. The gates opened, the squad moved in. The ruined city stretched before them like a graveyard of metal and stone. Buildings had collapsed into piles of debris. Streets were cracked and broken. The sky above was gray and empty. Somewhere in the darkness, the drones were waiting. Stay close, said. Move fast, do not stop for anything. They advanced through the streets, staying in shadows, watching every corner, took point, covered the rear, stayed in the middle, her eyes on her computer screen. I am picking up drone signatures, she whispered. 6 of them, 200 meters ahead. Can we go around? Asked. No, they are moving to intercept. Drew her sword, then we go through. The first drone appeared from behind a collapsed wall. It was a sphere of black metal with 3 weapon ports and glowing red sensors. It saw them and fired immediately. Shot back. His plasma bolt hit the drone and sent it spinning, but 2 more appeared behind it. Move, shouted. The squad ran. Plasma bolts flew past them from every direction, deflected 2 shots with her blade, the energy splitting around the steel. Fired constantly, his 4 arms letting him aim in multiple directions at once. They reached cover behind a broken vehicle, was breathing hard. This is wrong, she said. The drones are too aggressive. They should be hunting, not attacking in packs. Maybe the simulation is harder than we expected, said. No, this is not the simulation. Looked at her screen. Her face went pale. The drones have switched to lethal settings. Silence. What? Growled. Something went wrong, a malfunction. The drones think we are real enemies. They are trying to kill us. As if to prove her point, a drone flew over their cover and fired directly at them. The shot missed by centimeters, burning a hole in the ground. Grabbed and pulled her down. Can you fix it? Maybe. There is a control station near the extraction point. If I can get there, I might be able to shut them down. How far? 1 kilometer, through the worst part of the city. Another drone appeared, destroyed it with 2 well-aimed shots, but more were coming. They could hear the hum of motors all around them. Stood up. I will clear the path, she said. Protect and cover our rear. We move in 60 seconds. That is suicide, said. There are dozens of drones out there. Looked at him. Her eyes were calm, steady, completely without fear. Then you better shoot well. She did not wait for a response. She jumped over the cover and ran into the open street. The drones saw her immediately. 7 of them, 10. More were coming from every direction. Their weapons powered up. Red targeting lasers painted her body. They fired and danced. Her blade was everywhere at once. Left, right, up, down. Plasma bolts that should have torn her apart instead flew past her, redirected by angles of steel that logic. She spun through the air like she weighed nothing. She struck drones out of the sky with single blows. She moved so fast that the machines could not track her. Watched with his mouth open. He had seen her fight in the arena, but this was different. This was not a duel. This was war. Move, shouted, while she has their attention. They ran. Destroyed 11 drones in 60 seconds. 11 machines designed to kill, reduced to smoking wreckage by a woman with a sword. When the path was clear, she fell back to join the squad. She was breathing harder now. Sweat ran down her face, but she was not hurt. "Are you okay?" asked. "Yes, keep moving." They pushed deeper into the city. More drones attacked and shot them down while handled anything that got too close, guided them through the maze of streets, finding the fastest route to the control station. Finally, they saw it, a small building near the extraction point, still intact. But between them and the building was an open plaza, and in that plaza, 20 drones were waiting. "We cannot fight that many," said. "We do not have to," replied. "Can you reach the control station from here?" "If someone can distract the drones for 2 minutes, yes." Looked at the plaza. 20 killing machines. 20 sets of weapons pointed at the only path forward. "I will give you 3 minutes," she said. Grabbed her arm. "No, this is not the arena. These drones will not yield. They will not stop. If you go out there, you will die." Looked at him. Then she smiled. It was the same small, quiet smile he had seen that first night in the training hall. "Maybe," she said, "but maybe not." She pulled her arm free and walked into the plaza. The drones turned to face her. 20 red eyes locked onto her position. 20 weapons powered up. Raised her sword. The ancient steel caught the gray light. And then she moved. What happened next would become legend. Later, the survivors would describe it in hushed voices. They would say she moved like water, like wind, like something that was not quite human. They would say the plasma fire was so thick it looked like a wall of blue light, and they would say she walked through it like it was nothing but rain. She did not stop. She did not slow down. She cut through the drones like they were paper, her blades singing through the air in perfect arcs. Machines exploded around her. Energy bolts flew in every direction. And at the center of it all, a human woman refused to fall. Reached the control station. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, behind her, and fired at drones that tried to stop her. "Come on, come on, come on," she whispered. In the plaza was slowing. She had destroyed 12 drones, but 8 remained. Her movements were becoming heavier. Her reactions were getting slower. Even I had limits. A drone shot hit her shoulder. She stumbled. "YUNA!" screamed. She kept moving. Blood ran down her arm, but she did not stop. She destroyed 2 more drones, then another. Hit the final key. The remaining drones froze. Their weapons powered down. Their red eyes went dark, and then they fell from the sky like dead birds. The plaza went silent. Stood alone among the wreckage. Smoke rose around her. Her sword was still in her hand, but it was pointed at the ground. Her breathing was ragged. Her shoulder was burned and bleeding. But she was alive, and ran to her, followed, her face streaked with tears. "Are you okay?" She looked at them, and slowly, impossibly, she smiled. "I told you," she said, 3 minutes. They carried her to the extraction point. Medical teams were already waiting. News of the malfunction had spread, and emergency responders had been deployed. But when they tried to take her sword, she refused. "It stays with me," she said. No one argued. 3 weeks later, graduation day arrived. Stood on the stage with the other top cadets. Her shoulder was bandaged but healing. Her sword hung at her side as always. Instructor stood before the assembled academy. His yellow eyes swept across the crowd. This year's crucible was unlike any other, he said. A malfunction put lives at risk. Many cadets showed courage, but one showed something more. He turned to look at. On the first day of training, I told this cadet that steel cannot stop plasma. I told her that ancient weapons have no place in modern warfare. He paused. I was wrong. The crowd murmured, raised one of his 4 hands for silence. Steel cannot stop plasma, this is true, but the human behind the steel can, the will, the training, the spirit that refuses to surrender even when all logic says surrender is the only option. He bowed. It was a deep bow, the gesture of highest respect among the. You have taught me something I thought I knew everything about. You have taught me about strength. Bowed back. When the ceremony ended, she walked across the academy grounds one last time, and walked beside her, even followed at a distance. A young alien cadet approached her. She was small, with purple skin and nervous eyes. Excuse me, the cadet said. Is it true, what they say about your sword? Unsheathed the blade and held it up. The steel gleamed in the light of distant stars. What do they say? That it is magic, that it gives you power. Smiled. She looked at the blade, at the scratches and marks it had collected over 400 years of use. It is not magic, she said. It is just steel. Old steel carried by ordinary people who refuse to give up. She slid the sword back into its sheath. The blade does not give me power. It reminds me of the power I already have. The power we all have if we are willing to train for it. The young cadet looked at her with wide eyes. Could I learn? Could anyone learn? Placed a hand on the cadet's shoulder. Anyone can learn, she said. It just takes time, and patience, and the belief that you are stronger than the universe thinks you are. She walked toward the transport ship that would take her to her next assignment. The stars spread out before her, endless and full of danger. But was not afraid. She had a sword, she had her training, and she had something no weapon or technology could ever give. She had the will to keep going, no matter what. That was the human way, and it always would be.